Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Richard Lovegrove here from the Surgeons of Horror. Today I thought I'd dissect some of the Saw clips. So, the recent Saw film has come out, technically from the book of Saw, released by Twisted Pictures. The new Spiral film stars Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, and we were lucky enough to go to see the film the other night. And now I'm going to basically try and rip apart each of the traps. We're going to start with the first trap that we saw in the film. So just to warn you, spoilers and of course gore, because it's Saw, and if there's one thing we have come to expect from Twisted Pictures, it's gore. So let's have a gander. This was the official clip released on YouTube, and we're just going to check it out now.
From the book of Saw.
So the scenario in this case is what's just happened is he's seen someone wearing a Uncle Sam outfit snatch a purse off a lady, and he's quickly run down a sewer drain, and the police officer, who appears to be undercover, has not called for backup, but gone straight down to try and catch this person. The insinuation later on is that this is a corrupt cop, and it's somewhat deserved. So obviously a decoy there, singing a Madigan. And our favourite old piggy bee. Good old piggy boy. So, starting off first, we've got a tongue situation. So, he's got his tongue clamped down. Now, initially when I thought this, I was instantly thinking, is there a bolt going through the tongue? Because if anyone has ever seen those piercing videos, there's, like, you know, enough tension should be able to tear that flesh through a bolt. But it does seem like this is actually clamped pressure down on the tongue, so it's going to try and either pull the entire tongue out, or what I would argue, because there's nothing latching the tongue on the other end, it's literally just probably going to slide off. There is enough friction, and with enough saliva, even the maneuvering of the tongue, the muscle of the tongue is kind of able to maneuver into tight places. And the distance that we see between the tongue in this shot does seem to insinuate that there would probably be enough room for that. Let's continue. Now, here is the second point. Now, with one of the best things about the Saw film in the first film was it was the idea that you had done wrong, but there was a choice of redemption. There wasn't really the threat of life so much from the beginning. Obviously, this was played with because you could argue that in the first film, he started off underwater, so there was the potential of drowning even from the get-go. But I would argue that that was somewhat more of a body reaction that would cause you to get you out of that situation. Whereas this is literally like barbed wire or razor wire, some sort of modified razor wire that seems to be around the wrists, binding them there. This alone could be a cause of death. Easily you could bleed out. So it's interesting that this was a form and not just sort of like tied wire that was bound around, because even if it was unbarbed wire, it would still cause enough pain, it would do the restriction, and it would still be enough maneuverability and take enough time to get out of it, either if it was rope or if it was some sort of galvanized wire, for them to be able to get into the position that later on they're able to maneuver the trap. So again, now it's insinuating that he's woken up in this position. So, like I was saying before, it doesn't seem like he's attached in any other way. Usually there is a harness device until the subject wakes up, and that initiates the trap, or at least the pre-trap video, something that will explain why you're here and how you could potentially get out in the view of the designer. And this is something I'm going to go on a little bit later. It's very important about the traps when we're looking at them, rather than just saying, oh, this is a good or bad trap, because again, that's a point of view, but rather from the perspective of the designer. What is the intent of the person designing these traps and these trials to try and better understand their psyche, so therefore you might be able to get out relatively unscathed. So just an interesting sort of thing here, because he's obviously just being supported by that tongue. So instantly we get the impression that his weight alone cannot pull his tongue out. Again, if he was unconscious, his full body weight would most likely have been on that. At least that's the insinuation. There seems to be nothing else propping him up.
Hello, Detective Boswick. I want to play a game. The 3 train is arriving in 2 minutes.
Now, here's another point. Just before we go into the trap again, I wanted to bring up, I liked the idea that it was a different voice, even though the pig costume is the same, and the video sequence display is the same. The idea of it being a soothing voice, almost a calming sort of approach to the situation, is an interesting psychological bend to take, because obviously that stretch is a juxtaposition of the emotions that would currently be felt in this position. But also it seems as if it's taken that new step on modern technology, which is insinuating that this is dialogue that's been typed into a website and it's been like Microsoft Sam repeating it back to you, which I like. It makes that anonymous nature a lot greater. Initially, when it first starts, it seems like it is just another person speaking with a voice or a voice modulator, but I do think that this is something that's been gone through an algorithm, and there's a different voice that's probably being charged by AI or powered by AI. Also, just in this shot that I've frozen on, I wanted to bring up that the clamps that are holding this device on, you've got a ring that goes around that major bolt on the top of his tongue, that's connected to 2 rings, and then they're not D rings. I'm trying to remember what they're called, but you see that hexagonal bolt or octagonal bolt. I'm not too sure what shape it is, but that bolt, if that's rotated, that will then open up a gap in the top of those that ring, that chain link there, and you can then lift up that ring and get it out of there. And so the argument would be that if you had your fingers there, the ability to do it with not a lot of lubrication, and it does seem that there has been that foresight, as in there seems to be some sort of oil or anything like a hydrocarbon solvent, something that would lubricate an engine, or even vegetable oil would be able to create the same situation. Because there is a time limit to it, you haven't got the ability to do this. Having said that, you are still wearing your clothes, and the clothes that he's wearing seem to be pretty absorbent. So I would argue that anything you're wiping on that would be able to get you the ability to do it, even if you're wiping it off the chain area and then doing this a couple of times. I still think that if you were calm, that could be a potential. Obviously, if your hands were free.
It is up to you to decide if this will be your final stop. You have taken the witness stand many times and railroaded innocent people with your lies, putting them away in jail. Today, it is you who will be railroaded. You have one chance to live. Tear from your mouth the tongue that has so often been used to lie and to deceive.
Now, in this shot, I was interested because I didn't know what his dental hygiene was before. So I didn't know if he was biting down on something that was causing this, if the bar that was actually clamped down on his tongue was serrated, or was even going to rotate in a certain way. As in, again, because what I was saying before is your tongue doesn't just go to the length of your mouth. Your tongue is long. It goes like right down your neck. So it attaches to a lot of different muscles and tendons and areas of your body. So it's not something that you're easily going to be able to tear out without tearing out everything else. So that's why I was saying before, it seemed like he was supporting his weight okay with it before. And so I was instantly assuming from this shot that the thing clamping down on the tongue was going to sever it, was going to cut through it. Or at least that was more of the insinuation, because there's still thought that you're starting off with him his whole body weight on it already, so you instantly know that that's not going to do it. Plus, also, it's going to result in, I would think, too much blood loss. Plus, also, if you do this, you're going to go into shock. Our body instantly goes into shock to prevent us doing more damage, but also to shut down processes so that our body can quickly identify and target those areas so that we don't have to worry about coordination or standing up, our motor skills, all our kinesthetic goes out, because that is a major component of our brain and what charges it. If you look at bird brains, the term bird brain is interesting to denote an idiot, but even corvids, the family that has magpies, ravens, and those kind of birds, are some of the smartest birds that we have still around, and their brain has a very large motor area. A lot of their brain is devoted to being able to power their balance, their ability of flight. So the movement is a major component in their body, and sacrifices other certain areas of the brain in which humans have been able to develop, because we haven't had to worry about certain digestive processes or other things, and being able to communicate has been able to alleviate a lot of processes we would have to go through in the natural world, like hunting, gathering, and these sort of things. Obviously there is an element of communication that corvids use and most animals use, unique to their own species, but in this case it's something that I just want to identify, that how you use your body will denote how much brain power will be devoted to certain areas, and thus when we go into shock, it's our body trying to go into an emergency mode where it's trying to target any areas that are unique to be repaired, and if not, it's going to shut your body down so that you don't experience the pain or the discomfort. It's a fantastic evolutionary trait, and it's something that we can see in every species. I'm pretty sure every species has a sort of shock response to it, where they will go into an anaphylaxis area. Anaphylactic shock is as well the thing that starts cardiac arrest and stops the heart. So is one of the causes of death. So even just the element of shock, arguably you could say that someone could just have a weak heart or be extremely scared and suggestible, and even just by putting them in these situations, their heart's going to stop, or halfway through the video they're going to realize what's going to happen and there's no way out, and pass out, in which case then you run the question of what the trial was hoping to achieve in the first place. But the designer has already implemented the reason why he's here. He's a corrupt cop. He's spoken on the stand and put people away, or not put people away. I'm not exactly too sure, but the designer has deemed this as something that can be redeemed by tearing out your tongue, which I don't think is a plausible way of it's a good psychological manipulation, because it's not giving you the reasonable thought to think that this is possible to survive. It's not like cutting off your arm in previous things, even the ideas of bodies of flesh and stuff like that, as in there's certain elements which you can get past, and Your Movie Sucks actually went into great detail where you can try and manipulate those machines by urinating in them, or putting fecal matter in there, or even shoes and other things. This is a lot more contained, and you're already initially in there with a lot of restrictions, and even the balance issue alone is making your brain have to do a lot of calculating, yeah? So you have to automatically work against shock in these shock environments. So as much as we might be yelling at the screen, do this, do that, your brain isn't in that mode. Your brain is literally in fight or flight, and you can't fight anything. You have to think about it. So yeah, let's go back to the video.
Take a leap of faith and you will live. Only your weight will rip away your lying tongue and save you.
So that previous shot there looked as if it had a bolt going from the bottom underneath, but as they just said, the leap of faith will release you, and so it's going to insinuate that the whole tongue is going to tear out. But I'll try and get up a shot of the human tongue. Let's see if we can, or even just by opening up Google. I know, sorry, a lot of tongues approaching, but I was instantly drawn to this one. You can see there's a major tongue there, but there's a lot more going back. That's a pork tongue. So this is a wax anatomy of the human tongue. So you could arguably, I guess, try and tear these areas. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming I know anything necessarily about the anatomy of the body. This is literally, when I was watching it, instantly I was thinking, I thought that the tongue was going to be much harder to rip out, and it's your head as well. So I mean, the amount of blood that pumps through your head is insane. If you rip it out successfully, I still think you're going to die from blood loss. And this is, again, I think you're going to go into shock well before that. So let's have a look again.
Live or die. Make your choice.
So now it seems as if he's pulling against it and he's going to tear out of that razor wire. Now, again, at that point you would say, yeah, you're probably, like, you know, again, I know it's down the road and not across the street, but it's still the insinuation that anything on there and the heightened blood rate, like, you know, as in it could just be something that does it. Also, it's modified razor wire. So the razor wire that it appeared to be in that was serrated on such a way that if it was put on those the axis on that right angle, then yeah, that's going to tear through. That's going to pick chunks. Like, that's even going to pull your bones across. You know, it's going to want to try and get through there, or get lodged on those bones. Again, this is a clearer shot of those two little shackle bolts that I do think that now his hands are free, he's going to be able to get around there and do it. The only problem is a ticking clock is just going to make you more disorientated, more conscious about other things that aren't necessarily important in this scenario. So now he's got the ability to go around and touch it. Has he seen those bolts on the side? We don't know. He's going to try and pull it off manually. Now, interestingly enough, I would be even thinking you've got razor wire there. If you were really determined, you could potentially use that razor wire to try and cut directly through that tongue, thus severing it there. Again, you've still got the blood loss thing. Not to mention, oh my god, the bacteria in your mouth will create some sort of infection. You're going to need to get to a hospital straight away. Obviously blood loss and obviously a mass infection. Still able to relatively feel comfortable with him supporting his own weight. So now, this is a heavier set sort of guy. So the other thing I was thinking of is I'm relatively light. And I've done some aerial things and combat and rope stuff. So what I was thinking as well was, is there the possibility to alleviate the weight from the mouth by going up, wrapping your arms around the chains and trying to invert your body to try and get above of where the train's going to be? I don't think that I'd be able to do that in the time that's here. Physically, both as well as the height that you would have to get, I think would be beyond the length that you would laterally go. If you were on a chain that's this far down and your body is here and the train's height is probably going to be here, and you laterally like reach up to maybe about there and invert your body, you've still got your head in the exact same position, and you would then have to try and shimmy up that chain. And again, like I said before, you haven't got any gloves on there. It's probably slippery as all hell. If the designer has thought ahead, hopefully they've lubricated the entire chain so that they've thought that's not a possibility. It's a far fetch. I'm not saying that it's a plausible option, but I'm just saying that it is instantly in panic mode. You're going to think of a lot of different things, and then I think would be going through your head. The only possible thing I think it would be is it might alleviate the pain and the stress on the tongue. Having said that, though, you're going to be inverting, so you're still going to have to pull that weight up. So you've still got the weight of all those metal bars and everything like that, but it would still be less than your own body weight. But again, we've established that he seems pretty, I don't want to say comfortable, but he seems pretty able to support his weight with just his tongue and that limited standing ability on that wood there. So he's reaching around there and he doesn't end up finding the bolts. I'd argue that it seems like they're in his field of view, as much as he is still struggling around. So he's instantly now trying to do what the device wants and to pull his tongue out of his mouth. You could use your teeth and tie and do this. It's been possible before. I mean, there's been certain cases, I mean, even in the film 7, there was that situation. So in that situation at the end there, he ends up deciding far too late that he's going to make that decision. I mean, you have to do that. If you're going to do this, you've got to do that well before the train is even seen. I mean, it comes around a corner. I'll go back and we'll see the timing that he actually sort of has. See, he's not biting down on it, and that does really seem like it's the smartest option. It's not like Jigsaw's going to come out and say, no, you didn't do it right. So I'd say now, if you saw that, that's your last chance. well too late now, because you're going to land on that ground, get up, and get out of the way of the train. The other thing is that that chain is still hanging down. Depending on how that is attached to the roof, it has to support the weight of that guy. I'm not very good with weight because, as I said, I'm pretty light. But I would argue that whatever harness stability, whatever attachment that those chains are to the ceiling, would be enough that that's going to cause major damage to the train. So now we get an interesting maneuverability from the Jigsaw character, the one designing these traps, is that there's collateral damage. This is the first time that I think I've even seen it, and when I watched the film I didn't even think about it. I just thought that chain's going to go into that train, it's going to stop the train, it's going to damage the train, it's going to derail it possibly. I don't know how far, and I'm sure please send comments down the thing of what you think, but I'd argue that there was the possibility for immense collateral damage here in the designer's intent, which does raise the question of what the designer's aims are. Yeah? If this is literally a personal vendetta, or if there is a care for collateral damage, in which case the whole Superman, Man of Steel argument is sort of brought up, the morals of these. If the designer feels themselves a moral entity to be able to put people in these situations, to be able to right a wrong in their life or other people's lives, how do you then justify collateral damage of that train driver? Obviously he's going to have PTSD, or you would assume he would have some sort of trauma after that, because there was nothing he could have done to stop that. Even, as I said, if he had rounded that corner in the second that he saw it and he jammed on the brakes, I still don't know. And again, anyone who works for the trains or drives trains, please let me know if you think that that train would have been able to stop if you were the driver of that train. I would love to know that. But I'd argue that that would still be something that you wouldn't risk, like, you know, as in if you wouldn't test that out, like with a friend. You wouldn't say, cool, just stand there on the train tracks and let me see if I can round that corner and stop. You know, I still think that the potential of you hitting that thing is going to be huge. But again, the potential for collateral damage from the designer's intent on this particular trap seems to be pretty enlightening as to his motivations, or her motivations. You know, as in, because again, the instance that the voice came out, I like that it was androgynous as well. That we didn't know who it was, or if it was more than one person. And I don't want to spoil too much of the film. I would love to do another trap, so please like the video and let me know if you would like to see another trap down there, because I have many different other ones. There's a lot of fun ones in this one, but I would like to just delve into it, hopefully, because we can understand the psyche of these films, but also what the filmmakers are trying to say about the intention of an antagonist.